Hi guys, as you may recall a few videos ago I showed you all how to read music. However, you will have noticed that all of the notes that I showed you in that video are notes that you can draw within the staff. Today I'm going to be showing you how to read notes that are outside of the staff. So why are there notes placed outside of the staff in the first place? Well, sometimes the note that we want is either too low or too high to be written on the staff. So what we have to do in those cases is we have to extend the range of the staff by adding what we call ledger lines. Let me show you guys. Okay, so as you can see here, I've drawn out the grand staff and also middle C in both the clefs, which I've highlighted in pink for both the notes and the middle C that I've kind of drawn on this little keyboard here. It's kind of similar to what I did in my last video when I showed you how to find which key each note corresponds to on the piano or keyboard. So anyway, here's kind of the setup. Now you'll notice that even for middle C in both clefs, the middle C is not drawn within the staff in either of the clefs. Instead, I had to draw an extra line below the staff in the case of the treble clef, and above the staff in the case of the bass clef before drawing the note. When we add the extra lines like this, we call these ledger lines. And like I said earlier, what they serve to do is that they extend the range of the staff when the note that we want to draw is too low or too high to go on the staff. Let's go through some other examples of notes on ledger lines. So first of all, I want to talk about the notes that are kind of in the middle range of the grand staff. And that's going to be this B here, right below the middle C itself, and also the D above it. In the treble clef, we can draw the D and E without using ledger lines. We simply just draw them like this. Notice how the D is right above the middle C, very, very close to it, okay? Which is going to correspond to this D on the piano or keyboard. I can also draw the E that goes right beside it, which is going to go on that bottom line there, okay? So we have this note corresponding to that D, and this note E corresponding to this E on the piano or keyboard. We can draw the exact same keys in the bass clef using ledger lines. So here we have middle C, which is this guy over here. Now, all I have to do is draw a ledger line. And notice that the D that I want to draw is right above middle C. Since the note middle C is on the ledger line itself, it would make sense that in order to draw this D in the bass clef, all I have to do is draw the note right on top of the ledger line like this. Now what if I want to draw the E that's right beside it? As you can see, I've run out of room again, so what do? Draw a ledger line, draw a second ledger line, and place the note right on that line. So in the bass clef, this is actually the same as this E here in the treble clef. Although they are drawn differently between the two clefs, they actually correspond to the same keys on the piano or keyboard, and therefore they sound the same. Does that make sense so far? Similarly, now let's move down to this B here, okay, the one that is right below middle C. In order to draw that in bass clef, very easy. All I have to do is draw one note below middle C, and so that's going to sit on the very top line of the bass clef staff. Okay, I can draw the same notes in treble clef using ledger lines. Okay, so since this is right below middle C, I'm going to go ahead and place my ledger line here, like that. And then because for middle C, the note is drawn right on the ledger line, and we want the note that is below it, it makes sense for us to put the note below the line like this. So even though they are drawn differently between the two staffs, like they look very, very different, they both correspond to the same key on the piano. I hope that makes sense so far. Now let's talk about some other notes that are on the low end and the high end. Why don't we just set a few landmarks first? So we know that we have middle C here. Let me just also draw that corresponding line. We have our middle C here. Now, do you remember how to draw this C? I discussed this in one of my more recent videos. Okay, this C here is going to be like this on the treble clef. Okay, I'm just putting that there as a landmark. Now, what if we want to draw this A over here, okay? Let's say I want to draw this A over here. Well, to do that, first we have to remember how to draw this F over here. We know that that F, if you've been paying attention to my previous videos, that is, we know that this F is going to be on the top line of the treble clef. It would follow then that if I drew one note higher than that, that this would correspond to this high G over here. After drawing this, you'll notice that I've run out of space on the staff, but there's still many more notes that I can actually draw. In order to draw this A here, what do I have to do? I'm going to have to extend the staff upwards. So to draw this, I have to place a ledger line above the staff and then put a note on it like this. And that's going to be our high A over here. We can of course keep going. So again, I have my ledger line, and this time I'm going to draw a note on the line, on top, like sitting right on top of the line instead of having a line go through the middle. And this is going to correspond to the B next to the A that we had just drawn. Now, what if I want to draw this C? Well, no problem, just extend the staff even further. So I have one ledger line, and I've run out of space after this B, so I draw a second one. And that's going to be the high C over there. You can keep going with this. If you put a note right on top of that second ledger line, that's going to be the D, and so on and so forth. Now, if we look at the low end of our grand staff here, so going down to the bass clef, let's once again establish another landmark. Okay, so this C here, if you've been paying attention to my other videos, you'll know that we draw it over here like this. Okay, so this is all the way there. Now, let's see if we can draw this G here. So if you've watched my previous note reading video, you'll know that this G is drawn like this in the bass clef on that bottom line. Okay, so this is over here. If I keep going down, this is going to be the F right below the G that we just drew. And now we've run out of space on the staff. So in order to draw this E here, we have to extend the staff downwards. So I'm going to draw a ledger line to extend the range of the bass clef staff, put a note on it, and that's going to be my E right there. I can go lower still, have this as the D, lower still by adding another ledger line, and that's going to be our low C all the way there, so on and so forth. So you can extend the range of the staff a lot. Like I've definitely seen at least like 7 ledger lines in music, but like you can really just keep going with it. It's a matter of counting though. It's actually, once it gets to the point where you have stuff like this, which is kind of like annoying, you actually have to kind of just count the notes in between to figure out whatever this is. So hopefully that kind of makes sense, you guys. And what I want to do now is, now that you've seen this on paper, I think it's important that you also kind of see where all of these notes go on an actual real piano. And that's what we're going to do right now. Okay guys, so as you can see, I'm sitting at my piano. Now let's take a look at some of these notes again that we were just talking about. So why don't we try to find this high A right here on the actual piano. Okay, so first let's find middle C on the piano before finding that. So on my piano, this is my middle C right here. To find the high A, remember how we talked about establishing this higher C as our landmark? Well, that's gonna help us find this A more easily. So this C here, as you can see, is just gonna be the C that is above the middle C. So I go back to middle C here. that C, the higher C that I was just talking about, is the next one up here. The next one up from middle C. Going back to the diagram here, you'll notice that the high A that we're looking for is going to be before the next highest C, but after the C that I just played. So we know exactly the range in which it is found. So if I go back to my high C here, remember that A is going to be before the next C up, which must mean that it's this A over here. Similarly, we can do this in the bass clef. Why don't we just pick this D over here? Okay, D. Now, again, we have middle C as our first landmark, which again is going to be here on my piano. The second landmark, okay, remember how I drew this C here? The one that is just one lower from middle C. Let's find that on the piano. So I have my middle C, and this is the one that's right below it. Going back to the diagram, this D here, okay, this one, is going to be below the C that I just played, but just one above the next C that's even lower. So again, we've established the range in which this D is going to be found. So going back to the C that I just played, remember the D is going to be below this C, but also above this one, which means that it has to be this D here. Okay, so some of you must be thinking right now, okay, so you've shown me how to draw ledger lines and like put the notes on them and everything, but what if it's already drawn out and I just have to identify it? Well, it really is just a counting game. Let's take this random one that I drew, for example. Okay, so you want to make sure that you start at a place where you know for sure 100% what the note is. So for a lot of people who are just starting with ledger notes, they tend to go from the F here, which is, or the G. You can go from the G if that's something that you already know. This is the last note that you can draw on the treble clef staff without having to put in ledger lines. So you can count from G, add a ledger line, A, on top of the line, B, next line, C, D. Like it really is just a counting game until you kind of like memorize this and don't have to think about it anymore. But let's take this for example. Like if I had to figure this out, my process would be, okay, the way I do it, because I'm kind of like used to it now, I kind of skip notes in between. I know for sure that this ledger line, if there was a note on it, it has to be A. That's just something I've memorized. So I would go A, C, E, G, B. Okay, so I can identify this quickly as B because I'm kind of skipping notes in between. At this point, I'm very, very familiar with the piano and everything. So for me, this process, I don't have to like count every single note. Okay, it's not gonna take that long for me. And where is this B going to be found? Well, we know that this B is here. Obviously, it can't be over there. It's going to be the next one up, so this B is going to go right there. We can also do the same thing in bass clef. Let's just pretend I did not run out of room over here. Okay, if I go whatever, randomly, okay, I don't even know. So again, same thing. I'm just going to be skipping letters, so I know E, C, A, F, D. This must be a D. But as you can see, it's just a counting game, right? And if I have to like figure out where this is going to go, well, obviously it's not going to be this D because that's already this one. It's going to be the next one lower, which is over here in my diagram. Okay, so that's just gonna, yep, that's really messy because I don't have any more room here. Anyway, I hope you guys kind of understood my explanations in this video. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below. As usual, thank you so much for watching, you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos in the future. Thumbs up this video, comment down in the comment section below, and of course, share the video. As well, don't forget to follow me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!